Alistair Cooke's American Journey by Alistair Cooke. Read by John Byrne Cooke.
Forward. Wartime Britain, though few nowadays have a personal memory of those years, is fairly well etched in our collective imaginations. The silent, blacked-out streets, the night skies lit by beams searching for bombers, the raucously cheerful workers' playtime lunch-hour concerts broadcast from a factory somewhere in the north, the boxed gas masks on every scurrying shoulder, the nightly pip-pip-pip preceding BBC radio bulletins where the only consolation for the invariably bad news was that the unshaky baritone of the announcer Alvar Liddell suggested somehow there would always be an England. There was a palpable sense of isolation, and then there was the marvelous moment when Mr. Liddell at last had something good to relate. America had entered the war. Nobody in Britain had much more than the foggiest notion then what the Americans might bring to the war, or indeed what Americans were really like. There was just a palimpsest of Franklin Roosevelt, Charlie Chaplin, John Steinbeck's Okies. Saul Steinberg's famous New Yorker cartoon, much later, about summed up the state of knowledge. The skyscrapers of Manhattan distended westward to Hollywood and the Pacific, with something vague and dusty in between. The arrival in ration book Britain of GIs armed with temptations of nylon stockings and cartons of cigarettes excited more envy than curiosity. After all, they came in late last time, took the credit for whipping the Kaiser, didn't they? And they were coming in late again. What was happening in the vast mystery of America was, of course, of supreme importance and more than passing interest, as that new American citizen Alistair Cooke realized at the time. Having worked in London as the BBC's film critic, he had returned to America in 1937 in time to hear the drum rolls of war reaching Washington from the Far East. He was in the capital for Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, and then, on the morning of February 27, 1942, he left the air of tobacco-choked energy that is the Washington odor of panic. Forsaking the hot news from the capital, he set out on a prodigious journey to explore the country, south, west, north, and east. On the first trip, he drove much of the way in a car with 5 retreads, then, in 1943 and 1944, retraced his steps by train and bus. Only a handful of Americans have seen the country like that, still less reflected on its diversities. There is nothing weird about the doctor he meets in St. Louis who tells him, "I never was west of Louisville nor east of Charleston, West Virginia." The reporter is long past deadline with his report, you may think. He did finish it in 1945, but everyone then wanted to forget and forge ahead with a brave new world, so he put his manuscript aside. About 2 weeks before he died, his secretary, Patty Yasek, was cleaning out a closet crammed with papers, and way at the back she came across 2 copies of a few hundred typed sheets headed, "The Face of a Nation." Cooke was thrilled at its rediscovery, and so will be his readers. 60 years have enhanced its intrinsic interest, since it is at once a kaleidoscopic portrait of an America now vanished, and a sketch of a fighting mad nation spitting on its hands. Very little has been written about that home front by comparison with the mountains of battlefront literature. Cooke was 33 when he began his journey, and while the manuscript lay unpublished for so many years, what he learned clearly nourished the broadcasts about America he began in 1940 and continued until 2004. In this book, so magically spirited from the past and into your hands, he is mostly concerned with a characterful people scattered on a panoramic landscape, emerging from one nightmare of the Great Depression to enter another. He observes that a farm the size of Surrey is being transformed into a tank training ground, and that a lovely 5-mile peach orchard in Georgia has been torn up for warplanes wing-tip to wing like a plague of locusts. But he forbears to take us on exhausting excursions into factories. For that we can be grateful, but some perspective is necessary to appreciate what came out of all the encounters he records so well. We know now, and we have the word of Joe Stalin for it, that for all the sacrifices of
Sample complete. Ready to continue?